Black people, I have to share these examples because I think it explains certain things that we need to be paying attention to. So recently you had some migrants in New York. They got into a fight with some cops, beat the cops' asses. Thank you for that. And the district attorney there in New York let them go. And according to the district attorney, they had to let them go because they had to make sure they had the right people.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg breaking his silence on last weekend's Times Square cop beatdown and felt pressure to quell outrage by explaining why his office released all but one of the 6 suspects arrested without bail.
The important thing is to hold the right people accountable for the right conduct. This is a bedrock principle of our justice system.
NYPD sources believe 4 of the suspects already skipped town, reportedly hopping a bus to California ahead of their next court date in March.
They don't want to just hold people without any evidence or without knowing that they were the criminals. And we all know that that's hogwash. If you're black in New York or in America, and the police just think you are guilty of a crime, they can harass you, they can beat you, they can murder you, or if they're able to get you under control, they can arrest you, throw you in jail, and just leave you there for days, for weeks, for months, for years. The most famous example of this was Kalief Browder. Kalief Browder was accused by some immigrant kids of stealing a backpack. They arrested him, threw him in jail, had no evidence. He wasn't convicted of any crime because they had nothing rock solid, but they just left him in prison for 3 years.
On the night of his arrest years ago, Kalief Browder was walking home from a party with his friends in the Bronx, May 15, 2010, when he was stopped by police based on a tip that he had robbed someone weeks earlier. He told HuffPost Live what happened next.
They had searched me, and the guy actually said, at first he said I robbed him and I didn't have anything on me. And that's
you say nothing, you mean no weapon and none of his property?
No weapon, no money, anything he said that I allegedly robbed him for. So the guy actually changed up his story and said that I actually tried to rob him, and then another police officer came and they said that I robbed him 2 weeks prior, and then they said we're going to take you to the precinct and most likely we're going to let you go home, and then I never went home.
That's right. Kalief Browder did not return home for 33 months, almost 3 years, even though he was never tried or convicted. For nearly 800 days of that time, he was held in solitary confinement. He maintained his innocence, requested a trial, but was only offered plea deals while the trial was repeatedly delayed. Near the end of his time in jail, the judge offered to sentence him to time served if he entered a guilty plea and told him he could face 15 years in prison if he was convicted. He refused to accept the plea deal, was only released when the case was dismissed.
He kept saying that he was innocent. They kept trying to offer him plea deals to let him leave prison, but only if he admitted some sort of guilt. So they would let him just up and leave as long as he said he was guilty. So one more time, if he said, I'm guilty of the crime, they would say, oh, thank you for saying that you're guilty. Now you can just leave. Now you as a guilty criminal can just leave. And they did that because they knew that they had nothing on him and they had no reason to hold him. So they just wanted him to admit. And so because he didn't want to admit, they just left him in prison, where he was beaten, tortured, where he suffered so much psychological distress and damage that when he got out of prison, he killed himself, murdered himself, because he just couldn't deal with it. Who knows what the men in prison were doing to him? You had inmates jumping him, beating him up. You had guards on video beating him up, just assaulting him. And so this kid wound up killing himself.
Well, we end today's show with the tragic news that Kalief Browder has committed suicide. He was a young New York student who spent 3 years in Rikers Island jail without being convicted of a crime. On Saturday, Kalief took his own life at his home in the Bronx. He was 22 years old. In 2010, when he was just 16, he was sent to Rikers Island without trial on suspicion of stealing a backpack. Earlier this year, the New Yorker obtained explosive video showing the violence to which Khalif was subjected to there. Surveillance camera footage shows him being abused on 2 separate occasions. In one clip from 2012, the teenager is seen inside Rikers Central Punitive Segregation Unit, better known as the Bing. As a guard escorts Khalif to the showers, Khalif appears to speak, and then the guard suddenly violently hurls him to the floor, although he's already handcuffed. In a separate video clip from 2010, Khalif is attacked by almost a dozen other teenage inmates after he punches a gang member who spat in his face. The other inmates pile onto Khalif and pummel him until guards finally intervene. Khalif's case led to calls for reforming New York's criminal justice system.
That's what black people go through. The police don't have to have a real crime. They don't have to have any evidence at all. They can murder you if they want and get away with it. But more often than not, they will arrest you, throw you in jail, and just leave you there for as long as they want. If your story doesn't get enough attention or nobody knows about it, you'll just be sitting in a box, being tortured day after day. Time, your life just whittling away while the justice system just sits there and ignores you. So we all know that we couldn't keep these migrants in jail because we didn't have exact proof. We know that's BS because it's done to us blacks all the time. That's why I wanted to give this Khalif Browder example. So, again, black people, I don't know what you're going to do. Or you can sit back and just watch, and these migrants are being given money and treated with kid gloves for a reason. For a reason. They plan on using these migrants in the future for something. More than likely, they want them here, like I say in other videos, because it's going to help the wealthy financially, but also they can use them as a voting bloc. They can use them as a new security force, or they can use them for whatever war they're deciding to come up with. We already see in England that they're trying to reinstate the draft, which means they just draft men and women into the army without their consent. So we don't know what type of conflict or war these wealthy white men and women around the world are trying to start up next, but it looks like they're trying to ramp up some sort of big conflict because it helps them financially. And they may start it up here, and those migrants will probably be used as soldiers, the same way we did in the beginning, centuries ago, when we brought European immigrants over here, and the Italians and the Irish, and we just brought them here, gave them places to live, and then told them we want you to join our army and fight in our war. It's the same thing happening now. Migrants are being brought here, and they're probably going to be used as an attack force, a security force / soldiers, whatever. But last point is, if they're being used as security force or soldiers, we don't know who they're going to be directed at, who they're going to use those migrants to attack. It could be us black people. Black people are becoming more independent. They're becoming more militant, more rowdy. We're fighting back more, standing up for ourselves more, demanding more. Who knows if the wealthy whites are trying to build up their own army so that they can just get rid of us and wipe us out. Because none of it's making sense anymore. Migrants are being brought here, just given money, given places to stay, given credit cards. Now we see that the migrants can attack cops and be given preferential treatment. This guy just let him leave. If the news didn't make a big deal about this and it wasn't talked about, those migrants probably still would have been free, or they would have went back home. And nothing would have been done. Those cops would have just got their asses beat. Now, if you're a black person and you yell at a police officer, the whole country will rally behind the police officer and excuse any and everything that the police officer and the justice system does to you because they're upset at what you did to the police officer. So I just want to make this real quick because when I heard the story, I was like, I got to talk about this one because this thing with the migrants being brought here and just being treated like kings is very weird to me. And I've been making videos about this black purge that I think is coming, and how I think that the migrants will be used as soldiers in this conflict that I think is going to happen between the whites and the blacks. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it that way, but that's the only way to say it. Conflict between the whites and the blacks, and that they're going to be reinforcements. So you, people got to start paying attention, talking about this more, preparing, getting yourselves ready, because I don't understand what's going on. Not only do I not understand what's going on, but also this the way that black people are treated, black citizens in this country are treated compared to anyone else, even migrants who just got here, is insane. And black people, you don't want to do anything about it. You want to just allow this system to continue the way that it is, and still you want to live in a society where the wealthy white men and women treat you like animals or like garbage, like dirt. They treat you like insects and trash, and yet you still go out and you finance them and fund them. It's like, I don't get it. You still go out into these people's stores and you give them your money. You go into Walmart and you make these white CEOs, the white families that own these businesses, you give them money. I don't get it. You go into these big chain restaurants and the white owners and the white franchisee owners, you give them your money and you fund them and you build them up and prop them up. You go online and purchase these products made by white owned businesses, these shoes and bags and clothes and all kinds of things that you don't need, and you pump your money into the accounts of these wealthy white people who own and make these products, and you fund them. And then those wealthy white people take their money and use it to make sure that you don't get the things that you need, that you don't get the representation you need. I don't know. I don't know how many more examples to give. I'm gonna keep giving them. Every once in a while, somebody new finds these videos and they start talking about it. So I'm gonna keep doing this and see what happens. But black people, you better wake the fuck up and pay attention to what's going on.